A warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, and a warm welcome to quite possibly the most awesome place I will drink wine this year. I'm not, as you've probably worked out by now, in the Dan Really Likes Wine cellar. Instead, with Ranger Buck Safaris, I am up, and you can hear the hippos in the background, up at Cheetah Plains, which is a slice of unimaginable luxury in the heart of the Sabi Sands, a little tract of the Kruger National Park that is teeming with wildlife, but is also home to this quite exceptional lodge. It's very small, it's very intimate, it's very private, it's very difficult to get to, but it is enormously rewarding if you make the journey through. And it's rewarding for a number of reasons, not just the wildlife I mentioned. They've got a terrific chef, they've got great spa treatments. There's a gym, which I spent 2 hours in this morning with Archie, who runs Ranger Buck. He's a triathlete when he's not running his business. And there is also a marvellous cellar. And it's a cellar that I've already sampled a fair amount of wine from. And I've done so in some great company, because not only is Archie from Ranger Buck with us, Janelle de Villiers, the minibus taxi driver from Cape Town, is with us as well. And then there is a very good friend of mine, a man I spent a lot of time with, not just in South Africa, but around the world. Hello, Maponyane.
How are you, Dan?
I'd probably say I've been worse, because this is not a bad place to find myself.
Absolutely. I don't think the setting could be better for anything that you do. And to be able to do the Dan Really Likes Wine show here is pretty fantastic in itself.
Well, it's a real honour to have you on, both as somebody who I know really loves his wine, but also as a really, really close friend of mine. And we're going to talk some wine in just a moment, but let's take a second or two to absorb these surrounds between top billing and being an international man of mystery and travelling the world. You've seen some pretty luxurious places. Where does Cheetah Plains sit on your list of, oh my goodness?
I've seen some pretty phenomenal places in my time of each of those things that you just mentioned, and I've been exposed to some spectacular sights, but this spot plainly sits, I have to say, right on top of the oh my goodness. I've never experienced anything like this, and it's something I think everyone needs to, if at all possible, make a plan to come and see at one point in their life. It definitely is something that needs to, once you've seen it, it definitely is something you need to recommend that you put on your bucket list.
Yeah, probably my only problem with Archie for bringing us here is that he's ruined every future experience we have in the bush.
We'll never be the same again going to any lodge. I mean, what Ranger Buck Safaris has done by having us here is really just completely obliterated any other standard we can have wherever we go after this.
Oh, so if you think we're going a little bit overboard, well, you've got this pool right behind us, you've got the water with the hippos, the touches, the service, it is all fantastic, and it leads into why we're celebrating now this terrific, terrific cellar, and a great bottle of wine that you've chosen very, very specifically. What about the Maponyane wine story, though? Because if I go back to when I first met you, I don't remember seeing you drinking a lot of wine.
Yeah, I've never been big on wine drinking. When I first sort of started dabbling in alcohol, was always whiskey here and there, and starting to get a sense of different types of alcohol and how I felt about them, how they complemented the meals I'd have. That's what actually fascinated me more and more when I went down that road of exploring red wine especially, or wines as a whole, is how they complemented my meals. And I'm a person who's all about trying to live life as beautifully as possible in the smallest thing that you do. You know, even from how you, I don't know, deliberately and intentionally brush your teeth, like savoring everything. I'm that kind of person who likes to be in that moment with each of the things that I do. And I remember having a great bottle of red wine with a really good meal, with a steak, a fillet steak, and I really enjoyed the pairing, and that made me think, geez, this might be for me. And if it makes my experience of eating, which I'm obsessed with, even better, then why would I not want to do a whole lot more of it? And that's what started my journey of really liking wine.
It's one of the things that annoys me immensely about you is that I've seen you eat. You've got a burger joint, which we'll talk about in a moment. You stuff yourself with all sorts of things, and then you end up on the front cover of Men's Health. There's absolutely no justice to this space. The wine journey then has been shorter than some, but it's certainly been rich for the experience that you've had. Talk us through some of the wine experiences, maybe some of those great meals or some of the travels where wine has played part of that story.
I think one of the highlights in terms of going to different regions, obviously beyond South Africa, because we are absolutely spoiled for choice with some of the most amazing wine houses here, and wine farms and all the different types of places that are known worldwide as, you know, part of the best wines that you can possibly get. Was going down to New Zealand last year. Had the opportunity to go down to New Zealand and that sort of Wairaraipa, I think it is, Wairaraipa wine region, as well as the Marlborough wine region. I mean, New Zealand's really well known for its Sauvignon Blanc, and it's gotten, you know, plenty of awards for all their different farms because of this Sauvignon Blanc over there. But then the lesser known grape, or the lesser celebrated grape, which now is starting to gain even more acclaim and fame in New Zealand, is the Pinot Noir. And in that region of Marlborough, went to some amazing farms there, trying different foods with the different types of wine, and I really, really enjoyed that. I wish I could really say which one was which, because you end up having this day of visiting 9 farms, and you actually don't really know how you got there by the end of it all, especially because they each give you about 7 tasters, and they ask you to spit, but do you really every single time? And it was really, really spectacular experience, especially being out there in the region, incredible views and country that New Zealand is in terms of the beauty of it all. And I definitely got even more interested and sold on it, because what better way to appreciate the things around you and appreciate life than with a beautiful glass of wine?
I know we do have guests who watch the show from New Zealand, so hello from South Africa, the current home of the Rugby World Cup trophy. One of so many journeys that you've done, and you've had these journeys, you've experienced the wine, you've experienced the food through them, but I always get the sense from the conversations we have, the time we spend together, that no matter where you go, and you go to some cool places, you're always happiest when you come back to South Africa. Yeah. It's very much where the heart is. The South African wine that you've experienced, we're going to have one of those bottles in just a moment. Is there a particular grape, a particular estate, a particular wine that really strikes a chord with Maponyane?
I'd say probably because it was, and this is just a sentimental thing, it was the first wine farm I had gone to and tried different wines and had my first wine tasting and had my first wine pairing, and that was Takara.
Good start.
I was a student at the time, and we just finished varsity, and we wanted to celebrate, a few mates and I, and we went out and said we'd finally be adults now, because, you know, now we really had to fend for ourselves fully and start looking for jobs or whatever it might be. I was already working at the time. And we went over to Takara, and it was absolutely blissful. And, you know, you've obviously ventured down there a few times, and from the food to the whole process of the wine tasting and the explanation of the wine making, it really is so much better when you have background and you understand the passion and labor that goes into each and every one of these wines, and how much time it takes, and just what the winemaker needs to take into consideration while preparing a wine is something quite spectacular. And that's probably why I wanted to know more about it and go down that journey a whole lot more. And that's why, for me, it would probably be Takara.
And it's a great selection because it mirrors you in so many ways. You are one of the more multifaceted people I know, and you go to Takara and the wine is terrific. They've also got a splendid restaurant, and they make great olive oil, and they've got lovely views, and the art is amazing. So there are so many different aspects to it, and I think that applies to wine as a whole. There is so much to the wine story, and particularly in Stellenbosch, which leads us rather nicely into the wine we have today. So what we have is from a Stellenbosch estate called Keet, and this is their first verse, which I'm sure many of you will have had. It's your classic Bordeaux blend. It's about 40% Cab, 20% Cab Franc, another 20% Merlot, a little bit of Petit Verdot and a bit of Malbec in there. So it is the classic Bordeaux style. And when we got into Cheetah Plains yesterday, the very first wine you spotted when we went into the very impressive cellar was this First Verse. It's a wine you've had a few times before, and it's obviously a wine that has said to Maps, this one's for me.
Absolutely, and particularly that one was a great year for Keet First Verse. The 2013 and the 2015 are two of my favorites, and I absolutely love the full blend and flavor profile of it all. We'll obviously go into that a bit now, but I remember, kind of then learning more about blends and how that all works, and I particularly that bottle's about I think it's 44%. Is it 44?
It's about 41% Cabernet Sauvignon.
Cabernet Sauvignon, and then quite a half of that, as you said, 20% is Cabernet Franc. And then, you're kind of like reading about the different grapes, and then you want to go down the journey as to how they balance it all. And I think it's a really well-balanced bottle of wine. I love how bold it is. And, this is more on the slightly more tannin side than it is on the smooth side, but it still manages to find that perfect balance of the two. And if I, whenever I have it, I can always taste it, just even talking about it. It's also slightly more on the acidic side than the soft, but still manages to have that softness to it. And I don't know how they got it all right, but it's something I really enjoy. I'm a nose too, so I love fragrances and colognes and perfumes and all of that. And I really enjoy taking things in. And what you get from this is all sorts of pleasures.
Yeah, it's got the cab leading that left bank style, and Stellenbosch Cabernet Sauvignon is sensational. We sometimes forget in the delight of 2015 that 2013, slightly cooler season, was another really good year for red wine and Stellenbosch, and everything you speak of comes out in what's just such a great blend that 7 years old still tastes so fresh, so engaging, still really in its infancy as a wine.
Yeah, I mean, in my attempt to be you, I just swirl it now once it's had enough time to breathe, and you immediately get the berries. There's a bit of a plum in there. There's pencil shavings, a little bit of light wood.
It's a great one to use, pencil shavings, because nobody's ever eaten pencil shavings.
You can smell them though.
Oh, yeah, pencil shavings.
No. So can I tell you something very weird, which is probably why I love this wine and why it has such a great sentimental attachment to me. I had this very odd habit. So as kids, we all collect different things. I used to carry around these ice cream tubs to school, and I would get everyone to put their pencil shavings in my ice cream tubs. And I had stacks of them because I really loved the smell and like how many, I try to collect the most of them. Very, very weird. And so whenever it happens quite often where I'll be eating something and I'll just mention to someone, oh, can you smell that pencil? And they'll say, what do you mean, can you smell the pencil lead shaving?
So probably the global popularity of ascribing pencil shavings as a tasting note comes from somebody having done an interview with Maponyane and going, oh, that must be right. No, they are certainly there, and it is one of the delights of wine. It can come across as being very poncy first up when you say, oh, I definitely pick up a hint of a Helsinki summer's afternoon in late June. But there are things, whether it's the petrol you might pick up in a Riesling, or the banana you might pick up in a particularly fruity white blend. And when you say them, they're not so much this tastes like a banana, but it kind of gives you a reference point that somebody else can appreciate.
Absolutely, and I think for a lot of people, it's certain smells. Of course, you have that Proustian effect where the nostalgia takes you somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think when you can immediately attach it to that, then that is what you smell. A lot of the time when people will smell wine and will smell it together, you'll wonder, how can you smell that? But for you, we won't all have the same kind of, taste buds or palates or...
And it would be a very boring world if we did.
If we did, exactly. And so it's beautiful to be able to know what everyone else experiences, and then you try to go down that same road, and you can either pick it up or not. But that's what I love about wine, is the kind of journey it can take you through different senses.
You mentioned nostalgia. This wine is making me very nostalgic for dinner last night, where we shared a bottle of this in preparation, because we do a lot of study for the Dan Nicholl Show, and for Dan Really Likes Wine. Every television space is carefully rehearsed, and so we had some of this yesterday. It's tasting just as good again. It went really well with the dinner we had last night. Let's head to another eating space, though, and Buns Out, which is probably the single most successful burger joint in history, going from absolutely nothing to crowds outside the door every single day. It was a very different venture for you, moving into the food world, your first restaurant ever. You'd, like me, worked in a few of them, but this was now owning one. The success has been immense. Talk us through a little bit of that journey and why it was a project you decided to get into. And then what burger we might be sharing some first verse with at Buns Out.
So I have always been obsessed with food. If I could have named it Mups Really Likes Food, I would have. But at home, I had a very affectionate but not very kind of great sounding nickname, and my mom would call me, when it came to the dinner table, I was, I'll give you the translation, but it's very loose, I was the dustbin. Because anyone who had leftovers or anything, it always came to me, just send them to me. And after we'd finished dinner and had to have everyone's leftovers, within about an hour I'd be back at the fridge opening, and you'd hear my mom from a mile away.
How are you not the size of a house? How?
And yeah, I would travel and I'd always try find really great food wherever I went, or just really well done, simple food, good ingredients. I think obviously that's always what makes great food at the end of the day. And I found myself through my journeys just always on the road very quickly, never really stopping at any moment. And when I did get an opportunity, not really getting a chance to fully enjoy a long dining, fine dining meal. And so I always just try to find places that made great fresh food that specialized in certain things. And I found that in South Africa, all our restaurants, well, not all obviously, but many of our restaurants, we have this, I think we have a bit of an issue where we feel that we have to do every single thing. So you go to a steakhouse and you can get sushi, and you go to a sushi restaurant, you can probably get curry. And you have about 60 or 70 items on the menu, and you are absolutely, drowning.
It's overwhelming, isn't it?
It's completely overwhelming. You get decision anxiety from it. And then you end up ordering the same thing every time anyway, because you know it's good and you don't know what else to turn to.
And you also, you cannot find a kitchen that can successfully do that many dishes to a level of quality consistently. It's just not going to happen.
Absolutely. So I remember being about 15 years old, and I was about 12 years old, and my parents would always treat my brother and I to a night at Spur. We'd go for dinner at Spur, and obviously you got the where we would play games and have the playground, and I'd spend more time at the table. I know what I'd always kind of order, and I just always wanted to own a restaurant. It was so much fun. I mean, imagine all the food you could get for free. I mean, as a kid, that's how you're thinking about it. But as I obviously found out more and more about restaurants, I actually just wanted to be able to own one day, to fully embrace the experience and see what goes into it, and how you run a successful restaurant and be able to create an atmosphere where people are so happy around food. I think that's why I've always enjoyed what food represents. It's the joy that comes with it. And so I always said I'd do that before I turned 30.
And you did.
And I did. I remember telling my best mate this when we were in school a couple of times, and we were close since pre-primary school, since I was 6. And 23 years later, him and I having a meeting, and thankfully he had some experience in the hospitality industry. He managed a couple of restaurants, and we're having a meeting, and he kind of says, "I'm tired of managing restaurants." And I remember we used to speak about owning one ourselves. Are you still keen? And I'm like, timing couldn't have been better. I was going to ask you the same thing. Are you still keen? And then we embarked on the journey of Buns Out, which was initially going to be a pizza restaurant where we were going to try and make really good quality pizza. And then we had a couple issues, a couple run-ins, where the location we found, we couldn't have a pizza oven.
Which does slightly undermine the objective of having a pizza
restaurant. Exactly. But it was because it was a fire hazard of some sort. Mm-hmm. And we thought about the kind of foods that we love, that we pick up on the way while we travel, that are accessible, that are reasonably fast, but have really good ingredients. So it depends on you. It doesn't have to be bad all the time. how do you make really good, slightly quicker food? I mean, it's not fast food, but slightly quicker than normal food. And so then we decided about 3 weeks before we opened that we were going to do burgers. And thus Buns Out was born. And we put so much into making sure that we get the finest cuts of, local meat from our butchers in and around the area, and where we could source the best veggies for, obviously, what makes up the rest of our burger, and where we could make and ensure that we have the best buns. Of course, being called Buns Out, the buns need to be good in themselves or of a really high quality. And then it was born, and people have been so supportive of it, and it's done really, really well for us. Obviously, lockdown hasn't been ideal, but we think we'll definitely get back to where we were eventually again. But if I had a Keet First Verse in the restaurant, we've been having a bit more wine to try and change the way people experience burgers. It's not just burger and milkshake, and it's honestly, for me, if you're going to have a glass of red wine with a burger, you don't want a burger that has certain elements that will overcomplicate the experience of the association. So honestly, as simple as it sounds, I'll give you a simple pairing and then also a simple pairing, but simply a classic, so just a classic burger. And the other one, I'd say, is our brie burger, which is called Is It Brie You're Looking For? And Is It Brie You're Looking For? A little bit of Lionel Richie playing in the background, and a Keet First Verse, and I think you're in business.
They love puns at Buns Out. It's more puns out than Buns Out. I can see that, because there is a richness to the brie that's going to work really nicely. I think the tannic structure of the Cabernet Sauvignon is going to give it a nice counter punch. And that's going to work out really, really well.
Especially because it, as I said, as soft as it is, the slightly more acidicness to it, acidity, will also complement that cheese quite nicely. And I think it's just I just love everything about this. I just struggle to think of anything that you actually can't pair this with. It goes really well with lamb.
Which really I think it's such an important part of the wine discussion, and that for so long we've compartmentalized this wine with this food. And I think more and more people are starting to realize that it's what you like that goes well with something, and to play around with that.
And the reason I'd simplify what I have with it, and probably why you can have anything with it, is I prefer it simpler because in the end, when I'm having my meal, if I'm having it with this, I know it's going to be good either way. And I don't want my meal to spoil my wine in this case. Yeah,
one should never drown out the other.
Exactly.
Try and get a nice symphony. Speaking of drowning out, we do apologise for the noise in the background. Those are the resident hippopotami. Most of them are. The other one is actually Archie Rutherford from Ranger Buck, who's swimming amongst them at the moment. That's just how dedicated he is to his craft. And he's going to be taking us out on our game drive, which we're about to head off on. Before we cut off and say goodbye and go and look for some more wildlife here at Cheetah Plains. We both love travel. We both love food. We both love wine. You love the gym. Once we can get back up and traveling, which is something for the last few months probably been the biggest change for both of us in our respective lives, is there a particular wine destination that you'd love to go and visit?
I think probably, just because I've been hearing quite a lot of it pop up, probably Lombardy. I've just been hearing a lot about the great wine that they've been making over there, obviously for decades now. And I've just never had any wine from that region, and I'd love to go and see, experience it and see what happens there.
I think it'll be a terrific trip. I'll check my diary, see if I'm free over the same week. And it is so. I think of some of my greatest trips. I think of exploring the bodegas of Mendoza in Argentina, which is just wonderful. Time in the Napa Valley, time like you exploring New Zealand. And they just make for such rewarding and richly engaging trips. So I'm seeing maybe a wine escape or two in our shared future.
Absolutely, I think we should.
All Buns Out business, and Dan really likes wine. This has been an incredibly special edition here from Cheetah Plains with Ranger Buck Safaris, who brought myself and Maps Maponyane, and Janelle de Villiers, who is not just one of South Africa's, but one of the world's great drivers. And he will be joining us next week on Dan Really Likes Wine as we look at his wine story and wine journey, and in particular, his relationship with Jean Engelbrecht, the man who's not just his personal trainer, but also a man who furnishes him with a fair amount of wine. Right now, Maps and I need to go and jump on a game drive and head out into Cheetah Plains. We've ticked off most of the big five. Saw leopard this morning. I think we've only got the lion to go and we'll be all done. And I think we've still got a little of the first verse. We'll take this beautiful decanter from Cheetah Plains with us. And I think some first verse would pair very nicely with the Cheetah Plains sunset and the Sawi Suns.
Absolutely. Cheers, Dan.
Maps, pleasure having you. Thank you very much for joining us. This has been Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick n Pay. Big thank you to the fabulous team at Cheetah Plains. World-class sommelier, world-class wine, great food, and just a great place to escape to. And if I can work it out, somehow I'm going to try and get quarantined here for at least another month. Thanks too to Archie and the Ranger Bug team. We'll see you again next week. Cheers.